Welcome to the Ask the Email Expert series brought to you by Mailbird. Today's email expert is Steve Henderson. He is a data-driven email expert who specializes in digital marketing and email marketing compliance.
Okay, hi everyone. So this is Steve, our email expert for today's episode, and we're going to talk about something that is crucial to you, whether you're sending emails internally or externally, and it has to do with regulations, privacy, and just how you go about ensuring that you're following these laws and regulations, especially when it comes to something as sensitive as data and having information from your customers and as how you deal with that data as well internally. So Steve, take it away, and also thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, no problem. Well, it's difficult to know where to start really because I've been working in this for such a long time. So if I was just to give somebody an overview of the type of information that I think is really important for people to understand when it comes to digital marketing, compliance, email sending, it's actually the fact that the laws themselves, I feel, are not the most important things. And for someone in digital marketing compliance to say that, that might sound quite strange. And the reason I say this, though, is that we are lucky to work in an industry that is very, very well self-regulated. So I know that GDPR and the Canadian anti-spam laws and all of the digital marketing regulations and privacy laws are really important. I know they are. But what's actually more important to me is knowing why those laws exist. Because the ethos behind those laws, if you follow the ethos and if you actually understand what they are designed to do, then you don't necessarily need to know about every line of text in the laws, and you don't need to be a legal expert. You can be an expert in your industry. And for me, simply, it's delivering on the expectations of the recipients.
We're guilty of just following it because we have to follow it. So you saying that there is a different side to it beyond just the rules themselves, it would probably be a bit tricky for some people to comprehend. So could you dive a little bit deeper into it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's 25,000 words in the GDPR, right? And that's just one law. I can summarize that for digital marketers into two words: information and choice. And if you think about those two concepts and how they apply to your customers, my customers, and their customers, telling people what you are going to do, being transparent, setting expectations, giving the ability to say yes or no. So we know about this, we are familiar with this in email marketing with opt-in, with sign up, with consent, with unsubscribe links. We are telling people what we are wanting to do, and we allow people to choose information and choice. And when you look at any of the laws that are changing, and when in my role, when I look at the things that happen when clients get it wrong, when senders get it wrong, when I look at the rulings, when I look at the fines.
When you say
Yes?
get it wrong, can you give me an example of how
Yeah.
that can happen?
Yeah, so an example of getting it wrong is recently in the UK, American Express was found guilty of breaching the digital marketing rules for sending service messages to their customers, active cardholders. And if I can give a bit of a few numbers from the top of my head, I don't have this information to hand, but they sent in a year, it was I think 4 million messages to over a million different customers. They got 3 complaints. No, correction. American Express got 22 complaints to them, and the regulator in the UK got 3 complaints, just 3 from 4 million messages. These were messages to active cardholders, active customers. But some of these customers had opted out of marketing. Now, customers can still get messages that are relevant to the product, the services that they sign up for. And if they are necessary, they can still be sent. And American Express got the guidance wrong. They interpreted the guidance wrong, and they sent messages that contained too much marketing. It wasn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. If you think 22 complaints out of 4 million, 3 complaints to the regulator out of 4 million, that's a low failure rate, but they still got fined £90,000.
That's a lot of money. And just because they were sending emails to people who had opted out of marketing, but then they still, in a way, sent marketing content to the subscribers, making them feel almost trapped, because I think that's why most people report these emails as well. Which begs to my question is, what if you are sending emails to a person that you're doing cold outreach to? Because doing cold outreach is when you reach out to someone that you've never been in contact with before, but you've gotten their information from tools like hunter.io, or you've seen it on your website. So how do those laws go for the average business person who's just doing outreach?
Well, and this is where I say that why I say that the laws aren't necessarily relevant, because the laws are different in Europe, the UK, North America, Canada. The laws are different, but if you think about the recipient's expectation, you could be sending emails that are consumer type emails. Now, if I receive consumer type emails without previously opting in, without knowing who that sender is, without having a brand relationship, under CAN spam in North America, that's legal. Pretty much everywhere else in the world, it's not. But have a look at the impact of what that does. Anyone who's worked in digital marketing, email specifically in the last decade, will be aware of the annual reports produced by what was Return Path, now Validity. They show the state of the industry in terms of deliverability. And the comparison between North America, which allows opt-out mailing, mailing without prior consent, without any knowledge of who that person is, sub 80% inbox rates on average. Europe, UK, over 90, or even over 95% inbox rates.
So it's higher there, even though there's a law for it in Europe compared to North America.
Because the expectations, if you meet the expectations of the individuals, it works. Where's the expectation if nobody knows who the sender is? Right. In the UK, the Direct Marketing Association, the DMA, every year produces a number of different types of research. One of them is called the Consumer Tracker. Now, again, people in email will be familiar with subject line optimization and creating the right call to action. Subject line specifically is seen as the thing that is the primary driver for whether it generates an email open or not.
Or even if you're the average person reaching out to someone, you also have to make sure that your subject line complies with these rules as well.
Yeah, there is that. Now, the DMA Consumer Tracker shows every year, and has for as long as I can remember, that the number one reason that determines whether a consumer, an email recipient, opens or not is recognition of the sender. So you can apply this in lots of different ways. You can look at that inbox placement statistic from Validity or Return Path. You can look at the email tracker. You can look at anybody's results. You can look at this in any way. We've not mentioned GDPR or anything like that. You see how the laws themselves do not matter because the self-regulation of the industry works. How does it work? Those recipients who do not want those emails, do not expect them, do not respond favorably, hit junk, complain, delete it. Those signals, those negative signals, are collated and collected by the inbox filters to drive a sender reputation, and that sender reputation determines whether that sender reaches the inbox.
For our not so tech savvy listeners, it is technically saying that if you're on the receiving end, you have the right to unsubscribe and declutter your inbox. You have the right to complain if you're getting emails because of how email is regulated and how the laws are.
You know, it's even without the laws, even with the laws not existing, think about that example in North America. The laws are different, but the laws don't matter because think about that return path, validity, state of the market report, sub 80% inbox rate. Why? Because people hit junk, not because of the laws, because the recipients mark that sender as unknown, unwanted. I don't want that. That collates into this sender score, sender reputation. That sender reputation determines inbox placement or blocked.
So you have control, you have more control than these laws because you're receiving this in your personal channel in your inbox.
Absolutely. And that's why I think internationally, yes, I'd never say that the laws are unimportant. What I'm saying is understanding why those laws exist. Those laws exist for a couple of reasons. One of them is to protect the interests of the consumer, of the data subject, if you want to use the technical terms. But even if you don't understand how those laws work, just understanding that information and choice principle, tell people what you want to do, tell people in advance, set the expectations, give them a choice. If you do that, you adhere to the law and you adhere to these industry principles which self-regulate anyway.
So I also want to know from the consumer end, from us being the everyday person, when we're receiving these emails or when we're going in our inbox, what are some of the ways that we are unaware of how these laws or how our interaction with our inbox are in our favor? Because a previous expert was like, people are afraid to unsubscribe or they're afraid to tell people that they don't want emails anymore. But you're also telling me that the power is as simple as it sounds. We forget that we have power over our inbox. So how are there ways that the consumer is not aware or is not as savvy to the fact that they have more push in these laws when it comes to engaging with these marketers?
Well, again, I'd separate the laws from the industry self-regulation. So the laws, that's when people get things really wrong and people get fined. Nobody really needs to think about that. Simply think about the consumer power of their own inbox. And that was your question. What control do you and I have as consumers over the content in our inbox? Well, if we're using one of the international providers, such as the Verizon Media domains, the Google provided ones, the Microsoft provided ones, what this allows people to do is use their personal interaction in their own inbox to drive their own personal filtering. So there's two layers, if I can just very quickly explain. There's your preference over your inbox will be recorded for you. So if you mark a particular sender as wanted, i.e. it originally delivered to the junk folder and you pull it out of the junk folder, that's an incredibly powerful signal that your own inbox will remember. And that sender will then deliver to the inbox. And that sender specific guidance that you provide over your inbox is applied in lots of different ways, from displaying images, from the Gmail tab placement, junk folder, not junk folder, or block completely. So all of these signals individually and uniquely apply to you. So that's the first part.
Nice, nice.
Now, the second part is that all of these individual signals that you and I provide are then aggregated up into a global picture of that sender. And that global picture of the sender creates essentially that overarching sender reputation or sender score that tells the email filters what to do for people who haven't created user-defined signals. So if I can just pull those two bits together, if you and I give our mailbox instruction to say, deliver to the inbox, promotions tab, junk folder, show images, block, if we've provided those signals will tend to be remembered. If there's other people who have not provided those signals or those choices, if you like, then what will tend to happen is that aggregated sender reputation will determine what happens to everybody else.
Instead of
If
saying,
I've not,
why am I getting this? You should start putting to action in your inbox so that you send the signals to what you want and what you don't want. So you have to be active in that participation as well.
That's right. And it has those two levels of effect, your personal effect, but then it also contributes to this global effect.
Nice. And what's one message that you would send or you would say to marketers, people who are using emails actively for their business? And what's one tip that you would give to the consumer who, the everyday person, because we're all on that end, that's receiving those emails?
To the person who is sending those emails, I would say to look at the negative signals, the negative metrics, not just the positive ones. If I can explain the typical marketer process of sending a kind of old-fashioned newsletter style campaign, you create the content, you select the recipients, you send it out, and you watch the metrics go up, and that determines success or not. What I would also do is advise more people to look at the negative metrics and pay a lot of attention to those and have KPIs relating to those negative metrics. The negative metrics, I mean, are, of course, unsubscribes, complaints. Complaints is a term that we use to explain when people mark it as junk and we get those junk signals back through a feedback loop. So unsubscribes, junk reports, complaints, but also the degree to which those campaigns are being ignored. Now, this, if you think about it, if you see a click rate of 5%, you might think, fantastic. How I see that is that 95% didn't click. Why did 95% not click? What did I get wrong?
That's a good question.
And then if you look at this, instead of a single send, single campaign, but aggregate this up over a month. So marketers now, I deliberately used the old-fashioned example of a newsletter, but we don't send newsletters now. It's not 1995. We can send it an individual subscriber 2, 3, 4, 5 emails a week. So what's really, really interesting is to look at the engagement rate of a contact list or a mailing list over a monthly period. To say, not send by send, but this month. This month, I've sent emails to 500,000 people. Now, some people might have had 1, some people might have had 9, some people might have had 20. I'm ignoring that. How many people were sent anything? How many of those opened anything? How many of those clicked anything? Anything. And that view gives a picture of the combined effectiveness of the data, the content, and the combined strategy. And that is, for me, the #1 strategy of looking at metrics in an actionable way for email marketers, in a way that they may not have thought of before.
And for the consumer, what's one thing that you would share with them?
I think to not be afraid of using that unsubscribe link anymore. I think it's fair to say that if you know the sender, if you trust the sender, that unsubscribe link is fine to use. Of course, if you do not know or trust the sender, mark it as junk, just delete it. Do not click, do not interact. So it's a double-edged thing there. Going back to that piece of DMA research, knowing the sender, knowing the brand. If you trust them, and you can interact with the email positively, negatively, in whatever way you like. If you don't trust it, just delete it. Let the mailbox filtering do its job. Give those positive and negative signals if you do trust or do not trust.
Nice. And so on both ends, we have great tips. And I think my last question for you is, in terms of just privacy or overall, what do you see for the email industry for 2022?
Given the time of this interview, given the fact that this is just a few days after the Apple conference that introduced iOS 15 and the improved privacy settings for email, including the news that sent a few shockwaves around that image tracking, IP tracking, location tracking is going to be configurable and able to be blocked and controlled by recipients. Now, remember what I said before, information and choice. How many people actually used email tracking visibly, transparently, with choice given to the customers? So your question was, how are things going to change? Well, interestingly, what's happened with Apple this week isn't something new or different. It's actually something that's been continuing. It's been something that's been in progress for about 7 or 8 years, actually. If you
Because
go
there's
back
always been
7
a
or 8,
fight for data. There's always been a fight for privacy from the beginning.
yeah, I mean, I can go back literally 7 or 8 years when you would open up a new mobile app. You would download from the store, a new mobile app, and it would say, we need access to your contacts and your location and everything. That's already been phased out to a degree, and we've now got more information about it, more choice. Remember, it's those two terms every time, information and choice, not just in the law, but in this ethos behind the law. Then it changed with Mozilla, and we've got third-party cookie blocking. We've got from Apple the ability from iOS 14.5, the ability for you to create anonymous emails, temporary emails. Again, more choice for the consumer. What we are seeing is a shift towards more control for the likes of you and I as consumers. More control, more information, more choice. And so what can we expect in the next year or two? More of the same. Everything that I've seen happen in the Apple ecosystem in terms of browser and email has been followed by Google. So I think we can see the same things happening with Google in the next year or two. How does that work for email senders, email marketers? Well, open rates haven't been particularly effective or particularly accurate, if I can correct myself. They haven't been a particularly accurate mechanism for measuring for some time. And so I think we can see people moving towards link clicks instead of opens because that is something that can be transparent. One thing in particular, if I can just go down a little tangent, is the open actually happens behind the scenes. When somebody downloads that image, shows images, that tracking happens. So it's not possible, it's very difficult for an email to tell somebody in advance, information and choice, tell somebody in advance, this is going to happen, do you want to allow it? But link clicks, you can do that. If you actually make it visible in the email, these links will do this. This will be, this link will take you there and it will, this is part of terms and conditions, it will be tracked. You can have that information in the footer, perhaps. There's this is new, so we need to think about it as an industry, but I can see more being done to help consumers understand what's happening, not to phase tracking out completely, but to make tracking understood more by consumers and to make it more visible. And I can see that hopefully happening in the next couple of years as well.
So for marketers, it's tracking the link clicks, because that is where the real engagement or people's true interaction with what you're providing is there rather than the open rate. And for the consumer is that you're going to have more control over the data that you can give to third-party people, as well as you're going to have you have control over your inbox, but now you have way more control, and the choice is yours in how you're going to go further in what you get in your inbox. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a lot. I learned a lot of things. And thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time to just explain everything in detail, whether you're someone who's tech savvy or somebody who's getting to know what this all means in terms of privacy. You really broke it down for us. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. My pleasure.
And if you want to learn more about Steve and what he does and where you can learn what he's doing, be sure to check the links in the description there, and also be sure to check out our next episode of Ask the Email Marketer. We have some more interesting experts just like Steve who are going to give you information on everything that includes email and your inbox. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you guys next week.